Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode, special edition of Beyond Fulfillment Podcast, Trump's Impact on the Supply Chain, Volume 2, with special guest Jim Tompkins. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Dave. Good to be here. Good to see you.
Likewise, likewise. For those that don't know, you've been in supply chain for over 50 years. You're one of the foremost authorities in the world on supply chain, and you operate a large boutique B2B consulting company now, as well as many past successful supply chain companies. So you're certainly an accomplished authority on the subject. So, like we did last time, we just want to dive into these recent moves from the Trump administration and how they're going to impact supply chain, so people that are in supply chain can get some more information on what's happening, what it means for them, and what they can potentially do to put themselves in the best position to capitalize on what's going on.
Absolutely, a very worthwhile topic. And, I kind of feel like you and I are weathermen. We're, looking at the barometric pressure, and we're looking at this and looking at this. But the fact of the matter is, we don't really know if it's going to rain or snow, and we're not sure when it's going to melt if it does snow. And so it's kind of a moving target here. But it makes sense to look at the weather. It makes sense to look at the weather forecast. If we look out in my yard today, this is in North Carolina, you're seeing a yard full of snow. And so, yeah, uh, it's trying to predict the weather, and that's what you and I are trying to do. But the key is to be prepared.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you said it best last time. The only certainty is uncertainty. And we certainly have some uncertainty now. So let's dig into some of these different topics that have been announced recently, specifically in the past week since our last episode. Um, so let's start with the reciprocal tariffs. So that was announced and signed, I believe, at the end of last week. And so, very simply, Trump said, whatever they charge us, we charge them. So that way it's fair, no more, no less. So if we have a 2.5% tariff and they have a 20% tariff, well, then we're going to move it to 20, and then we can talk about moving it down either way. But it's whatever they charge us, we charge them. So given the massive trade imbalance we have with most countries out there, just on face value, it certainly seems like that's going to do a lot to even things out, and certainly increase the amount of U.S. exports or U.S. goods being sold not only abroad but also here at home. Would you agree?
Yes, I think philosophically, what you said is exactly what the Trump administration is saying. And I do think it's the right approach. Now, the challenge is maybe they're not using tariffs. Maybe they're using some sort of a protective tax, or maybe they're doing subsidies to given industries. And so, what we're going to be trying to do, the study they're doing between last week and early April, is to determine what is reciprocal. It's difficult to get specific on that because the rules are different in different places. If they have a quota system, how do you decide what a reciprocal type of tax would be, or a typical reciprocal tariff? And so defining specifically what those things are is the hard part. The easy part is say, we're going to have reciprocal because that's fair. I agree with that. We should do that, but not so easy to figure out necessarily. And like all things, there's always two opinions about everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you bring up a great point. And just to expand on that, so I'm not sure if you heard the interview that just came out. I believe it was yesterday with Trump and Elon, where they were talking about everything they're doing. And one thing Elon said is Doge is also assisting in implementing the executive orders, because and then Trump went on to say, listen, sometimes I'll sign an executive order, sounds great, looks great, okay, it's the right idea, and I just assume it's going to be implemented. But sometimes that idea is not as simple as he would like to be implemented. And Elon was saying oftentimes it doesn't get done. These orders don't get done. So that's a whole other process in terms of following up with the agency or whoever's involved and ensuring that they follow the rules and they implement the order as well. So with like just with respect to reciprocal tariffs, you brought up the quota system, and that we've heard a lot about the VAT tax over in Europe in recent days, the value added tax, and how is I could think Trump said we're going to treat that like a tariff because it essentially is. But how complex do you see that it's going to be implementing this reciprocal tariff system?
Well, I think it's going to be very complex, and I think there are going to be mistakes made. I think Elon and the president were being honest and open when they said, well, some of this stuff really looks good, but then when we get down to the brass tacks, it doesn't work quite so well. Guess what? You take anybody who's in business, who's trying to make decisions in a timely manner. Um, you're going to find the best of the best executives in the land make several mistakes each week, and that's reality. And when you have a plan and then something happens that plan can't be implemented, it might be some judge that's trying to use the judicial branch to run the executive branch. There might be some differences. Is this in the executive branch or this in the judicial branch? So it's going to be difficult to deploy. We're going to find that there's some things, we got rid of the de minimis rule with the $800 rule. Well, all of a sudden the customs said, wait, we can't handle an additional 800 million packages every week. I mean, we can't handle that volume. And so you had to put that on hold until we come up with a way of looking at doing these things differently. And so there's some real challenges in dealing with something as complex as global trade and trying to make expeditious decisions and make a difference. So um, I, I don't agree with the people that are throwing stones at whatever administration it is. If you show me an administration that doesn't have plans that don't work out, I'll show you an administration that's not doing much because it's a complex quagmire, and you got to just jump on board and start making decisions, and some of those decisions aren't going to work out, and it's going to kind of go haywire. And some of those decisions, we're talking about, European Union. Well, what if the UK rejoins the European Union? I was reading an article this morning that says, and this article is entitled, "This is a Year of Opportunity for Brand Britain in Europe." And it gives all this detailed discussion. Then down at the bottom it says, while we being Britain, is no longer a part of the single market or customs union, we currently have 11 free trade agreements with countries across the continent of Europe, covering 99% of trade. I'm supposed to be an expert at this stuff. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that they had, in place of the European Union, free trade agreements with 99% of the trade. And so it's not as big a deal as we thought. The pulling out of Brexit wasn't that big of a deal, but Brexit could switch and go in the other direction, and then we're gonna have to adjust to that. And so we adjust, they adjust, and we tariff and they tax and this and that. And so it's a real quagmire, and it takes a lot of courage to enter that fight, because I tell you, someone is going to get hit over the head every day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, right? A lot of moving parts with this whole situation. It's very fluid in all sectors. So with companies you see, right, particularly like global manufacturers that are doing business across multiple continents and in numerous countries. I mean, what are you seeing with how they're reacting to not only the reciprocal tariff, but some of these other um, tariff announcements that have been coming in terms of what they're doing for their businesses.
Well, I guess there's uh, a couple different angles on that one, Dave. That's a great question. Um, my wife and I spent the last 5 days in California, mostly on vacation, and we were out and about over San Diego and Palm Springs and Temecula and La Jolie and Capistrano. And so we were talking to people and restaurants and bars and these different attractions and so forth. And there's a huge difference between the way people in California view what's going on from the way people in North Carolina see it. And we're in the same country. If we're looking at what other countries are looking at, um, is the glass half empty or is it half full type of thing? And so there's some real disagreements on, what is fair trade and what is intellectual property and what is unfair advantage. And so the challenge that I'm most concerned about is the level of specificity certain countries, and primarily this is coming from Europe and China. You don't see it so much from the rest of Asia or from Africa or South America, but from Europe and China, they're really interpreting these negotiating comments coming from the White House as being firm rules. But we're saying, oh, wait a minute, wait, didn't Trump announce 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada, and then the next day say, oh, we're going to implement that 30 days from now? Didn't he do this? And didn't he do this? Is a dynamic thing. And so what we need to do is we need to stay dynamic in our opinions. I think some people are doing podcasts and they're drilling down. Well, if there's a 25% tariff on these items, that impacts these costs, and therefore the cost will go up 3.8%. Thank you for the math lesson, but that ain't going to happen. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. Just like the weather forecast said, at 4:30 this afternoon, the sun's going to come out. Well, that's his best guess, and he knows better than I do, but I'm not going to believe him.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a dynamic situation and also a free market. So if tariff was in place and that manufacturer, that supplier passed on the cost and that cost did go up, would there be someone else that would be willing to offer a lower price that wasn't subject to a tariff? Would someone else pop up and manufacture within the US to provide that same item at a lower cost because they're not subject? We don't, like you said, we don't know what's going to happen, but just looking at strictly the tariff number and assuming that's going to stay in place and assuming the costs are going to rise and the market has no choice but to just accept that price increase, that doesn't seem to make sense.
No, yeah, I think the greatest football coach, the greatest basketball coach, the greatest whatever, they make significant adjustments at halftime. And the reason they make significant adjustments at halftime is because things didn't work out in the first half as according to the pregame plan. And so, you gotta keep moving with the game, otherwise you're going to be behind the eight ball.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And so speaking of the other tariff announcements, so there was one, I believe, 25% on all steel and aluminum. And also, they said there was a future announcement coming with automotive, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors. And he didn't specify that, but he said it was going to be in the neighborhood of 25%. And also, that would be announced at some, I guess we've heard different things. I know you'd mentioned you heard sometime after April 1st. I thought I heard him say on or around April 1st, but why not April 2nd? So it wasn't on the actual April Fool's Day, just for superstition purposes or whatnot. But so, and then again, I think that the sentence after he said to give people time to adjust if they want to come back into the United States and manufacture those goods rather than staying elsewhere. So that, I think that gives some insight too into his thinking here, where I don't think the goal is just to have high tariffs everywhere else. He certainly won't hesitate to put them in place and leave them there if that's what he deems is necessary. But it seems like the goal is to bring the manufacturing of all these different industries back into the United States.
Well, he's certainly looking out after taking care of the American economy, taking care of the American consumer. Aluminum and steel, critical items for our defense industry. Pharmaceutical, take care of the health of the people. Semiconductor, we all know that the digitization of everything is taking place. AI is critical. And so we need to take care of those things. Automotive, I think, is a little bit different category. Aluminum, steel, pharmaceutical, and what's going on with semiconductors is very predictable. Automotive, I believe, is because President Trump made a promise to uh, the auto workers union, and he's does what he says. And so that one's a little bit different, but I think what he's doing is trying to protect our economy, make sure we don't try to fight a war without steel and aluminum, make sure we're not exposed to not having the raw materials we need to make pharmaceuticals, make sure that we got the semiconductors that allow us to continue to be leaders in the world in technology. So I think he's making very wise choices. But my goodness sakes, this gentleman, I don't know him, Howard Lutnick, just was confirmed yesterday as the Secretary of Commerce. It's the Secretary of Commerce's job to do tariffs. That's his job. And this guy's not coming aboard. This guy isn't some guy that is, been living on the street. This is a billionaire, self-made person that's done really, really well, very smart. He is a protectionist. He's said that openly. And so he started yesterday. Yeah, I I don't envy Howard because he's 2 months behind and he's only, 18 hours into the job, but he's going to come on board and he's going to make a lot of impact. I mean, think about what you and I were thinking about a month ago before we knew Elon's involvement, and then look at what's happening now. It's a different thing. So Trump is picking people that are like-minded, that are aggressive, and are willing to make some mistakes while, for every mistake they're going to make five really good moves. And so we have to put up with the mistakes because that's reality. But I think you're absolutely right. Trump's not trying to get an unfair advantage. He's just trying to level the playing field.
Absolutely. Okay. And with that being said, and I know you touched on this earlier, even when I was just doing some quick refresh, looking at various articles throughout just the last week about this, the impact on supply chain, all the tariff talk. I mean, it seems like there's so much. Sky is falling. We're headed for chaos. Recession, all this type of talk with what these these tariffs are going to do from all these various news sites. I mean, what's your take on like the reporting, so to speak, that's been done and kind of the overall sentiment that's contributing to, or do you think that's because I see the articles, but that certainly doesn't seem to be the sentiment from my perspective when I'm talking to other people. I mean, I guess there's a range of opinions, but what's your take on that?
Well, I think there's people that are still living in the, 2018 world where certainty was pretty clear. We didn't know precisely what was going to happen, but we weren't used to a major surprise every week. But then as we got into 2020, we found out we did have a major surprise happening every week, be it the weather, be it COVID, be it fighting wars, be it the trade wars, be it hurricanes and tornadoes and volcanoes and earthquakes. And I mean, it just seemed like everything went kaplooey on us. And so we have to think differently. The people that are still thinking like it's 2018, they want to have a precise definition of the problem. And therefore, because they're very smart men and women, they want to come up with the correct solution for that precise situation. The fact of the matter is, none of us have a clue what precise is. We can't even spell precise anymore. I mean, the chances of, what's going to happen with China and Taiwan, what's going to happen with Russia and Ukraine, and the meetings that took place yesterday in Saudi Arabia. Um, well, I shouldn't include Ukraine there because they weren't included there. But how is this all going to play out? And then try to say, well, given what's happened, here's where we're going to go. No, it's not like that. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. And so what we need to do is not just sit here and say, "Oh, I'm confused. I'm unhappy with this amount of uncertainty." No, we got to plan the options, and as we've talked repeatedly, we got to have some optionality. If this happens, we're going to look at this. If this happens, we're going to look at this. If this happens, we're going to look like this, and then we have a preliminary plan as to how we're going to respond. And Trump has given us the time to reflect on that. He's almost hanging a flag up that says, "Hey, business, plan for what might happen," and I'm giving you, the signals. And it's a lot easier to defend the play if we're able to intercept the play that they're going to run. Well, he's telling us what play he's going to run. Now, is he going to change it? He might, but at least let's prepare for what we think is being coming, and he's been giving us the information we need to plan.
Absolutely. Well said. Okay. And to that point, Jim, if people want to get a plan, if they have a business that is involved, like you said, in global manufacturing or operating in different countries or potentially subject to some of these tariff actions, and they want to get a plan in place and they need an expert to help them with that, such as Tompkins Ventures, what's the best way that they can reach out and get some more assistance?
Well, we've got a publication called Reglobalization. Send me an email at jtompkins at tompkinsventures.com. Tompkins is spelled Tompkins. So it's jtompkins at tompkinsventures.com. And just say, "Jim, send me the reglobalization paper." I'd be happy to get it to you. In the reglobalization plan paper, it's 29 pages long, probably too long, but I wanted to make sure I covered the options, and it kind of explains what's the process we need to go through to make this happen. And then you can go through that process, or you can retain us to help you with that process. But I think it's really important that we have the right team. We need to have procurement involved. The procurement people need to be involved because we're going to switch where we're manufacturing things. We're going to switch where we're buying our raw materials. Therefore, we need our transportation people involved. Therefore, we need our warehousing and distribution people. We need our sales and marketing people. We need our finance people. And so we need to get the entire organization looking at, how do we respond if this happens? How do we respond how this happens? So this contingency planning, or scenario planning, if you will, is really important, that we have done. We have it in black and white. And then when something occurs, we have a version of the plan that we need, we then want to follow. So we'd be happy to help people do that. We have a reglobalization team that's being run by a guy that was a past chief supply chain officer, Starbucks, head of supply chain at Walmart. I think this guy knows how to deal with difficult situations, and I've got full confidence that he and the team that we've put together have the expertise. We have European sourcing, we have Latin American sourcing, we have North American sourcing, we have China sourcing, we have the rest of Asia sourcing, and we have the Indian sourcing. We have the sourcing. We have the global transportation. We've got the warehousing. We've got the real estate people. We've got the marketing, the sales, the finance. We've got the IT people to do this. And so that's what you need to do, because this is like reinventing the company kind of on a fly. And so you got to be good to really make this happen in a dynamic environment.
Okay. Well said. And we'll link all those notes in the show notes. So if people want to get in touch, they have that right there. Okay. Well, thanks always, as always, Jim, for the insights and your knowledge on the situation. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.